Hi there, as well, and welcome to your final lesson for this unit, which is about Britain's position in the world. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to those of you who've been submitting work. It's obviously completely weird world that we're living in now, so I really appreciate everything that you're doing to stay on top of things. So thank you to Genesis and Hassan. You've been absolutely prompt with your submissions. Layla, excellent. Elizabeth, excellent. And Sasha and Armin, I'm seeing a lot more from you recently as well, so keep up with that. Really good. Appreciate everything you're doing. Even if you're not quite up to date with everything, do send me whatever you've got, and then we can hit the ground running when we get to school, get back into school. So today we're going to talk about the decolonisation process. Essentially this is split into three parts. So the first part is the cause for decolonisation, why does it happen? The second stage is the events of decolonisation, so what happens when, and the third section is the consequences, so how does Britain cope, how do the countries who are decolonised cope, and what is left behind at the end. So what I'd like you to do first of all is have a look at these starter questions. The first one is the cause of decolonisation, so why was it so important to happen now, post-war? We've talked a little about the UN, so that's what I've put that. Consider, for example, your role of the UN there, as I thought that you might be able to use that to help you. Second question, what problems do you predict Britain might face in the process of decolonisation? So pause the video now, jot down those two questions in your exercise book, or just jot down the answers straight onto the PowerPoint. I don't mind, whichever's easiest for you. And once you're ready, we'll pick up and we'll go on to the next section, which is talking about those problems and why we think Britain might face such toil from them. So we know the UN Charter is talking about freedom. So if Britain wants its support, it's going to have to give freedom to its colonies. The problem, our second bullet point, is if they do it too quickly, then that might cause more problems than they're facing at them. Those colonies will be facing at that present time. So, for example, you can't just pull your resources out of Kenya without making sure the infrastructure, the economy, the political systems, and the judicial systems are all up to date and will support an independent state in Kenya. So if you have premature independence, you might just make the situation worse. If you take Cyprus, for example, you've got a huge contrast in religious communities. So you've got the Turks, who are mostly Muslim, and you've got the Greeks, who are mostly Orthodox Christians. Even today, you've got a UN divide where they've got not a demilitarized zone where the two parts of the same island do not cross over. There are troops permanently stationed there. So there is a continuous and consistent fear of civil war. It's a lot more peaceful in Malaysia, which was then called Malaya, but there are still significant divides in the different religions. The power is held by the Muslims, but there are many Christians and Hindu and Buddhists who also live there who don't feel like they're represented. So there is an underlying fear of unrest and lack of representation, but not as significant as UN soldiers being permanently deployed as they are in Cyprus. So have a look at that in a little bit more detail to see if you can find a little bit more about those, and I'll give you a chance to do that in a minute. You've got anti-British colonial nationalism is developing in those different countries. The Suez Crisis shows that Britain cannot be superior if they've failed to try and dominate over the Egyptians. You've also got the failure to control Singapore. Britain has shown itself to be weaker against the Japanese, and therefore the idea of white supremacy is really beginning to be picked at the seams. Obviously, we've got this bad publicity that Britain is going to create if they're trying to suppress anti-British nationalism, and that's obviously going to then boost the enemies in the middle of the Cold War, the Russians and the Chinese. So what I'd like you to do on this next slide, you can see that I've given you 4 main reasons why independence was granted. So these are the causes, section 1 of our lesson. I want you to go through, you can use the previous slide and the next slide, to help you. But also I want you to look at page 187 and 189, as on the screen there, to complete these boxes. Now, lots of you are writing your answers straight onto the PowerPoint, which is absolutely fine. I'll save this on to show my homework for you. If you want to write it out by hand, that's absolutely fine. Lots of you are taking photos of your work and uploading that, or send them to by email. Honestly, whatever works best for you, I really don't mind, as long as you're doing it. That's absolutely fine. So pause this video now, jot down your notes. Do ask me any questions as you go through. Now, the next question we're going to ask is, what were the events of it? Were it successful? So what Britain hopes is they're going to set up this sterling area. We're going to have a Commonwealth that's successful, and Britain can dominate the trading within that. So that essentially would lead to the benefits of the empire without the criticism, without the cost, without the difficulty of actually managing the situation. This is going to mean that Britain has a much better reputation, and they don't spend so much money on supporting something that they want to. However, if you're handing over power to nationalist leaders, even the most peaceful ones like Nkrumah and Ghana, in the country of Ghana, you're losing control. All right, so you're not able to make sure that those countries remain in the Commonwealth and use beneficial trading with Britain. Kenyatta, who on the face of it is very peaceful, but takes over in a very country shocked by turbulence. You've got the Mau Mau rebellion, which you're going to find out about in a little bit. That situation is very much out of British control. And also we've got lots of different reasons why it's going to be difficult for the government to make a positive change and to make it within the British interests. So pause this video now, jot down your notes. You will also likewise find them in your textbook. And we'll pick back up again with our evaluation of the success of the British colonial policies. So this is essentially lesson 2 of the 2 lessons that we're doing in the week. So if you want to pause this video now and come back to it later on, I'm totally happy for you to do that. I'm just going to lump it all together to make it easier for you to organise. But do feel free to pause your video anytime you like and come back to it whenever suits you. So normally what we do with this lesson is I'd start to get you thinking about your research skills that you're going to be using for your coursework, because this is the very last lesson. And actually what I try to do is I try to split you into groups, and we go into the library and we use some books that are in the library, we use some online resources, and we start to plan and work out what research looks like at an A-level standard. So you split into groups and you look at different countries and you work out what happened to them in their decolonisation, and what the effect was on those nations. Unfortunately, because we're in lockdown, we're not going to be able to do that. So what I'd like you to do, simply go through it individually. If you want to work collaboratively with anybody, then feel free. I'm sure you've got each other's numbers and things on WhatsApp, but if you want to use Microsoft Teams, we've got the WCS history page. You're welcome to use that. I'm perfectly happy for you to use that in any way that is useful for your academic studies. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the different countries. We're going to talk about Malaysia, or Malaya as it was there, Ghana. We're going to talk about Nigeria. We're going to talk about Kenya, Cyprus and Rhodesia, which is now called Zimbabwe, of course. We're going to talk about what happened to those countries, why independence was granted, and the effect of them. So on the next slide, you'll see those countries written up in bullet points. This is the one I really wanted to show you. So what I'd like you to do, if you're on paper, copy out this table. If you're on PowerPoint, just type in as you go. So you're going to write the country down, you're going to write why they wanted independence, what the events of independence were, and whether that was a positive or a negative impact. Now, if we start with Malaysia, you will find all this information on page 1188. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to leave you guys to it and to jot down your notes as you go. Again, ask me any questions as and when you see fit. Now, the final task, which is what I'll put on Show My Homework for you, I want you to have another go at these AudioPie podcasts. I think they're excellent, and we're going to use those to help us revise over the next few weeks before we together start on our next unit, which is the coursework unit. So I want you to log on to AudioPie. Next slide gives you the reminder of the link and the password. Then what I'd like you to do is to find the podcast. It's called Britain's Position in the World and the Relationship with the USA. And then what I'd like you to do is listen to it, pause it whenever you need to, and there's a forms page here where I'd like you to write down your answers to the questions. Now I've set it all up here for you, so here's a tutorial. That's the one you want to listen to. It's 12 minutes long, 13 minutes long I think, and then on your forms page, which is this link here, you will see that there is a let me just open that to show you. No, I don't want to copy it. Open the link. You'll find there that I'd like you to write down your name first and then all the questions there. There's 13 questions I think, some of them quite short, but they should help you to summarise your learning as you go. Let me know what you think of the AudioPie podcast. Obviously this is the second one I've asked you to listen to. This is kind of counts as our reading for this week. Normally I get used to a bit of reading in advance of the lesson, but this is obviously slightly different. So let me know what you think. Good luck with your learning, and I will speak to you on Thursday at 2 p.m.